Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Repurpose Live, where we help you to rethink your priorities to truly create a life that you love. My name is Lissa Figgins, and my mission is to help after 40 women to rethink your priorities in 7 key areas so you can find where to focus to have more balance, growth, and impact. And it's my intention each and every week to introduce you to an amazing woman who is on this journey as well and is also inspiring others. So today, I'm excited to introduce you to Rene Washington. She's a master life coach, a podcast host, an author, and a midlife maven, which we're going to come back to that definition in a minute. What's interesting is after 28 years in corporate, she created a new life chapter, and it's grounded in passion and purpose, which is what this podcast is all about. And what she does now is she coaches women to break through what's blocking them from their dreams and their goals and to start living with clear, non-negotiable, self-honoring boundaries. So Rene, thank you so much for being with us today. First, tell me, what exactly is a midlife maven?
Well, a maven is an expert, but before I get into that, let me say hello to you, Lissa, and thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this. A maven is an expert, and I love alliteration. So midlife maven just naturally went together for me.
Because, I love that.
Yes, I am so passionate about us as midlife women, and midlife is a state of mind for me. You can be midlife, chronologically, that you start thinking about that in your 40s. But I mean, it's about you live until you're not living. Yes. And so you may be midlife at 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. My icons for that are Cicely Tyson, and we just lost Betty White. We lost both of them within the past year, and they lived until they died. I just can't think of any better way to live life than not sitting down in it. I mean, yes, we sit down to rest, but I'm saying that we get back up and we keep doing the thing until we are unable to. So that's my maiden definition.
I love that. I love that. So my next question is this. Obviously, we don't come out of the womb in midlife. So there's a journey that got you to that stage of life. And then from there to even helping others with that stage of life. So take us back a little bit. Of course, you're not gonna be able to tell us every part,
right?
But maybe a few highlights, some things that were a part of your journey to midlife and, and up to what you're doing now.
Yes. So the 3 highlights that got me to where I am now, I would put under the categories of health, divorce, and death. And, I am someone who was in a corporate career for almost 30 years. And I loved that career for most of those years until I began to start, not loving it so much. I was also married for a little over 20 years, about 21 years. And same with that. It was a good marriage for most of those years, and then it wasn't. And so the short version of all of that is that I started feeling something about some unrest and some some unease and dis-ease, which turned into disease around both of those areas that for a long time I didn't really know what was going on. And things just started feeling not right. And I happened to be at my annual GYN, my gynecological checkup. And I said to my gynecologist, and this was so unlike me because I was at that time, especially, I was a very private person. I was the person people came to with their problems. I didn't really go to other people with mine because I was living a great life. I didn't think I had a right to complain about anything. And so I found myself in my GYN office and I said to her, I'm going to quit my job and leave my marriage. Something is wrong with me. And she's like, okay, well, just hold on. She did a blood test and came back and told me I was in menopause. And mind you, at this time, I had been silently suffering for a couple of years.
Okay.
And when she told me that, I was like, oh, okay, this is it. This is something I'll just get past and
Sure.
come back to myself. That's not what happened for me. And when you hear about menopause, a lot of times you hear about the physiological things, the hot flashes, that type of thing. And for me, it was all emotional. And within a few weeks after that, I had a mini stroke. And that was, yeah, I had a mini stroke.
Wake up call, right?
Yeah. So a huge wake up call, because after 5 days in the hospital, they couldn't tell me why I had that. You know, they told me I was really close to having a major stroke, that if I hadn't gotten to the hospital in time, and I'd gone to work that morning, and it was the health nurse at my job who diagnosed me as being in the midst of having a stroke and got me to the hospital. And I still praise God for her. Yeah. But while I was in the hospital, that's when I realized that I needed to make some changes in my life. And you know how we are, hope springs eternal. So I still thought that, I could push through, turn things around in my marriage, went to a lot of counseling, did all the things. And a year later, it was not going to work. And so I ended up getting divorced. And then I had to keep my job, right? Because I got to take care of myself. Yeah. So that gave me a little renewed energy in that arena. But eventually, I had to, come back around to the reckoning of my career too. And what happened with that, the death part of that, was my mom died. And my mom died unexpectedly. She was 74, but she was a vibrant 74. Everybody that knew her was just totally shocked, because she had a pulmonary embolism and died all, within an hour. And when I tell you, that completely rocked my world, because, I'm a mama's girl, still am. I couldn't believe it. And what I came out of that experience with was how arbitrary, and we say this in our head, life is short, life is, but the arbitrariness of life, looking around to see who lived and who died, and it wasn't necessarily based on how you live, because I would, when I do talks and when I'm to groups of women, I will talk about this, and I will use the example of the Rolling Stones. And I would say, they're all still rocking out in their, 70s, looking like death warmed over, and they lived druggy lives of all kind of debauchery, and they're still here. One of them did die recently, but I'm just, it just came to me that we don't know. We really don't know, what life has in store for us. And that all we do know is that we have this moment. So what are you doing with your moments? What are you doing with your moments? And so I just, I just began to rethink a lot of things. And I was on this clock, this corporate clock that was telling me, you have 2 more years to work before you can officially retire. And I thought about that from this perspective of, you can hold out. And, I'm a woman of faith, and I'm praying to God every day, help, just change me enough to stay here 2 more years. And I was, driving up to the company crying in my car before I went in. And I am in a position where I am coaching and developing people, executives, professionals. That's, I'm leading this department that does that. Yes. And here I am just struggling. And so by this time, this was, several years after I had gotten divorced, and, I was involved with someone else. And he said to me, he was my fiance at the time. And I was like, I'm praying, and I'm still miserable. And he said, well, maybe God is packing your bags. And when I thought about that, that just really hit me. And I said, I'm sitting in this office, and I am externalizing the company has changed, the company this. And I was like, well, no, actually it's me. There are 100 people that would probably be happy to sit in this seat. This is about you. You have changed, and you are allowing some external entity to determine the trajectory of your life based on an arbitrary time frame that they've deemed is the time for you to retire, which they had changed 3 times in my tenure there. They kept moving the target out. It was 50 and 20, then it was age 55 and 25 years, and they just kept changing it. And so I said enough. And I will take risks, but calculated risks. I had been talking to my financial planner for a couple of years, and he had continued to say, no, this is not a good time for you to leave. And this last time I went in there with, in my mind, I said, no matter what he says, I'm leaving. And when I went in, he looked at me and he said, yeah, if you want to go, you can go. And so I did. I left 2 years before being able to so-called officially retire. And I left with no plan for what was next. I just knew I had to go because at that point it became a health issue for me.
Right.
That it was not healthy for me to stay. And after I left, I spent a year. I love the arts, and I had gotten really involved in our local museum, and I did a lot of art trips, traveling around this, and in the midst of all of this, people would continue to call me for coaching. And so I decided to follow a nudge that I had to get some training in life coaching. And so I got a certification in life coaching from the Martha Beck School. And here I am today. It just really was not planned. I kind of, it was planned, but not planned. I wasn't intentionally planning it, but it was waiting for me.
Exactly.
And so this is why I am so passionate about women, in this stage of life, being intentional about their lives. Yes.
So many things you said. I'm taking notes here that just resonates with how I feel, the things we talk about on this podcast. The whole title of this is Repurposed After. And again, yes, 40 is that arbitrary number. For some people, it could be 30. And I often joke and say, if I would have known at 20 what I know now, like, where could I be? But
I know.
But I do have to say, like, looking back, I wasn't ready for it. And as I'm listening to your story, it's like, sometimes it takes us going through all those things and all the struggles and all the, trying harder and, expectations and all the disappointments and all of those things to finally get to that point where we're like, this is it, right? And then we find that, and it just feels amazing.
Absolutely. It's so true. In the midst of what we've been going through for the past couple of years with the pandemic and all the unrest, I'm in America, so all the political unrest and all of that, and racial unrest, still, I am so grateful that I'm able to say, I love my life. I love to travel. When I tell you I love to travel, and people have been so shocked that I am just content sitting at home but I travel is like dessert for me.
Sure.
The main meal of my life is really good, and I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful that it's not about escaping from my life now. It's just about experiencing life and
living it fully, right?
Yes.
And I love the fact that you brought up gratitude. I actually have these 2 jars sitting right behind me on my side table that remind me of the brevity of life and how quickly it goes, like you were talking about that. And so I do this symbolic thing at my birthday, which is where I move one marble from one jar to the other one, and so I've counted out 100 marbles because I had one grandma that lived to 102 and one that lived to 98. So I figure if I split the difference, I'm going for 100, right?
Oh my gosh, I love that.
But the whole thing is like, as you look at the years you've already lived, and as that jar starts getting fuller, I'm to the point where mine are almost halfway. I'm not quite to my halfway mark for my 100, but I'm getting really close. And so you can look at that and have a lot of regret or have a lot of hurt and pain and things like that. But I say be grateful. Like God has
I
used
do
those
too.
years to
Yes.
bring you to where you are and to make you who you are, right? And so you can look
Yes.
back and see what are the lessons and what are the joys and
Oh
what are
yeah.
the good things that came out of that? And then you look at the ones yet to come. We don't know what those hold. Only God knows that.
We
So that's where we have
don't.
to have faith, right? And so we're
Absolutely.
just trusting. I mean, those are going to be full of hard things too, but they're going to be full of a lot of great things, right? And so we just have faith
Absolutely.
about those. But then that marble that is in my hand that I'm moving, it's like that's what you said. This is the moment that we have right now to live. And so we want to live that with urgency because, like you said, we don't
Hmm.
know how much longer we
No.
have, regardless of the habits we've been doing or the longevity of our family. And so there's that urgency to live repurposed, right? And say, how can I repurpose this moment right now and make this, count for it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the re is my favorite prefix. So I
Okay.
love the repurpose. So, I my group is called the Midlife Remixers, but the reset, the rewind, the repurpose, because life is not static.
Mm-hmm.
you know you you know uh, I do believe that I have a purpose for being here on the planet,
Yes.
and that purpose for me is to help as many women as possible get free.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other purposes that are connected to me and to that, and so those things can change over time. I don't have children. I have two nieces,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very involved with them as they were growing up. I was a very involved aunt. And so I was very purposeful in being present for them and being available for them. But now they're 30, and the other one's 6 years younger. And so they're grown, and
Yeah.
so I'm still available to them, but not in the way that I was when they were younger. So, we can continue to evolve and grow. And um, I I am always sad when I hear a woman say, I thought about this, but it's probably too late. Some variation
Oh,
of that. I'd
right.
love to do this, but,
Mm-hmm.
and no,
Yeah.
that uh, it's not too late unless we take ourselves out of that. That's the only, it's that's a decision that we make.
Exactly.
And so they're just, to me now in particular, when we are so connected to each other through the internet and social media, that we can see so many examples of I've worked with women, so, but men and women who are saying, I am going to try the thing, I am going to do the thing. And as Americans, we are so destination driven,
Right.
but it really, to me, is about the journey. I mean, if you've always wanted to act and you gave it up when your younger years, why not pick it up again? It's not about winning an Academy Award. It's just about the experience
Doing it.
of learning and enjoying and connecting to a new group of people and new experiences. Why would you not gift that to yourself?
Yes, I often say the goal of a goal is not to reach the goal, although that's a great place to
Yeah,
be. But it's the process. It's the who you become
exactly.
on the way there. Because if you're setting the right types of goals that are going to require you to grow because they're not things you've done before, then you can't help but be a different person and become that person who achieves those goals, right? So let's circle back to something you were just talking about, that whole like people taking themselves out of the game and saying it's too late. And I know one of your passions is helping women get past those roadblocks,
Mm-hmm.
those things that are keeping
Mm-hmm.
them from those dreams, those goals. I have a whole bunch of dreams on my board behind me. I'm asking women to send me their dreams. What's your dream this year?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm putting on a sticker and stick it up there. But yet there are so many things that get in the way. So what are some things that are common ones that you see, and what advice would you have for someone that might be experiencing that?
Oh yeah. So travel is a big thing for the women that I work with. But also there are women who are still in the workforce. They have goals of promotion. There are clients that I have who want to go in a totally different direction. I have a client who, one of my favorite client stories is a woman. She's a law dean, and she had always wanted to be a creative writer, and is the breadwinner for her family, and she had all this responsibility. And she's, my children are at an age where I've got at least 10 or 11 more years before I could even think about focusing on writing. And we coached her through, really, is that really true? Because that's the other thing. When we think about making life change, we think we have to leap off of a building.
Yes.
There are so many steps, little tiny incremental steps. And to me, it's about a plan. So when we coached through, as we did the coaching work, the flip that she came around to, the mind shift flip that she came to was, I've been telling myself that I'm a law professor who wants to write. She said, no, who I am is I am a writer.
Yes.
Who happens to be a law professor.
Yes, it's right. It still comes down to our self-image, right?
Exactly. And, yes. And that shift for her, yes, it changed her whole trajectory, because what she did then was, when she saw herself as a writer who happened to be a law professor, she was on, I think, around 30 committees. She dropped down to 4.
Right.
She opened up so much space in her life. She hired a writing coach. She started, working on her book. She had much more time to spend with her children and her husband. This is what she wanted in her life. And nobody died. She said, nobody, she said, nobody even really cared that I got off these committees. She said, I'm still doing a great job. I'm showing up, in my career, but I have now much more time to do the thing that I really love doing. And she didn't have to give up her job.
Right.
One of the things I learned when I was going through the menopause transition, I read a book about it. And one of the things the book said was that menopause is a time of reassessment, because we, as women in particular, since we're the care tenders, frienders, and that we are the nurturers, that we suppress a lot. We suppress. And when you get to menopause, those hormones start rearranging, and they bring up all of your crap, and you can no longer suppress. It's right there staring at you, and it's going to keep nudging you. And so what has been suppressed must be addressed. And that can be called for your relationships to be renegotiated with your children, friends, spouse. The people in your life may require some renegotiation, because you are changing. And it's not that I did get divorced, but I'm not, you don't have to get divorced necessarily. Can the people in your life transition with you, accept who you are becoming?
Right. Yes.
That's the renegotiation. And so for me, the work that I do starts with identity. Who are you? Yes. Who are you now at this stage of your life? And that's how you start that transition into a new chapter that's bringing into your life what you really want. And you are, as we talked about at the beginning, you are going to have to put some boundaries around that new self-definition.
So true, for yourself and for others.
Yes.
Once you know who you are and you know where you're going.
Yes.
I love the example you gave. She cleared out the clutter, like the things that were getting in the way, that were weighing her down, that were taking up valuable time and resources and energy. Focusing on what mattered most. And that's what I work with clients on, is like, let's look at these 7 areas of your life and what really matters to you in each one of them. And is that really getting your time? Is that getting your energy? Is that getting your money? Or are they kind of the leftovers and everything else is getting that? And oftentimes, like you said, there needs to be this rearranging to fit so that it aligns, right? We say something's a priority, but our calendar, our bank account, and our thoughts are what show up.
Not exactly. That's one of the exercises that I have clients do, is the values exercise, because, you ask somebody what they value, they can say, oh, I value my family. I value, faith. I value friendship. I value. And then, like you said, okay, so how much attention are these things getting? And do you value yourself?
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
because a lot of times we're not even on our list.
Exactly. Right. Back burner. And you hit it on the nail before. We're nurturers, we're caretakers, we're serving, we're giving. We often think, I think that it's selfish to think about what's important to us or what would grow us. And really, I'd like to flip it around and say, you know what? It's actually selfish not to. Nobody's getting a good version of you. Right.
Exactly. Because same thing. Yeah. I say, no, it's, you know, it's self-full, you know, I'm full of myself. And when I'm full of myself, the true, the authentic essence of who I am, then I am giving my best. I am giving my best. Do you want me on fumes?
Right.
Or do you want me showing up joyful and happy and engaged? And so when you look at it from that perspective, that is going to narrow down who's getting your time, who's getting your attention, who's getting your engagement. And those people that are left, they are getting the best of you. And that is not selfish. That no.
Right. Right. And at the end of the day, at the end of our life, that's what's going to matter, not all the other things that we thought, you know, needed to be on the list. And, you know, and we always find time, money, and energy for the things that matter, right? If something was valuable to you, you would figure out a way to make it happen. And so us using that excuse of, you know, it's too late, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the money, or I don't have, you know, the experience, or I don't have whatever, you know, it's really just an excuse. It's not a reason why we can't. So absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. Lisa, yeah. I had a woman contact me about potentially working with me. And then she got stuck on the cost, the investment. And I asked her, now this is a woman who called me because her grown children had moved back in. She had redone her bedroom, but she was in the basement because they had children. And she let them move back in, gave them the upstairs. She was living in her basement and she was tired of it.
Yes.
And she didn't know how to extricate herself from that situation. So that's why she had contacted me. But when we got down to the investment, now she's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I would like, and I said, so let me ask you this. If one of your children asked you for this amount of money, what would you do? Oh, she said, I'd find a way to get it for them.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so this is what we do to ourselves. We don't treat ourselves with the same attention and the same, love that we would, give to other people in our lives. And so she would get the money for her children, but not for herself.
And you know what? So, it will always cost more later. I think
exactly.
I don't think we have the time or the money or the energy or the bandwidth to do something. If we do decide to do that later, it will cost us more. Or, even think like on the health side, by not investing in our health or not investing in a coach that's going to help us with, our goals and our dreams and things like that, like down the road, it's going to cost a lot more, and it's going to demand our attention, and it's going to take away from the things that we want to be focused on. So yes, investing in you is so worth it. And, and you will get back, tenfold is my belief, right? If you
it's so true.
Engage in the process.
So true.
Love that. Well, we could talk all day because this is both of our, our cup of tea, and this is exactly where my audience is. So I know there are some women listening right now who are like, okay, I'm in midlife, right? Like how do I navigate this, and what's next, and how do I process these things that I'm trying to reassess and look at and think about this next chapter and all the things. So tell us a little bit more about, how can someone get in touch with you? What do you have to offer, just so there's kind of a place for them to go from here?
Yes. So I have a group called the Midlife Remix, and I have a coaching offer that, yes, you can work with me, but you also have a newsletter that you can get weekly blogs and newsletter information from me, where I'm coaching and, doing a little coaching in there too. So, and that's at the midliferemix.life, the midliferemix.life. I have a podcast called the Midlife Remix. And I also, because I am multi-passionate, that's another thing really quickly, is that, some of us, we have that one thing, but some of us like different things. And so wherever you are on that continuum, own that, and, be true to yourself in that. So I also am working with new coaches. I mentor for a life coaching university, and I am in a collaboration now with a coach, and we are mentoring new coaches in the coaching
Wow.
council. So yes, so we're launching that in February, the coaching council. So yeah, for new
So
coaches.
exciting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When you
yeah,
can take and pour into others, this
yeah.
whole, I will always have someone who I want pouring into me, but then I always want to make sure I have people that I'm pouring into,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Keeps
So
us
yes,
going and growing. So what we'll have you do is we'll put the links to that in the show notes so that listeners can go on and grab that. And if you're listening and you're thinking of a friend who's in somewhere in this midlife stage, which again, we said is a state of mind, not necessarily a number on the calendar, share this episode with them. It may be an encouragement to them of they're not alone, and it's okay to start rethinking some things and, reassessing and reprioritizing and rearranging what needs to happen. And, and just, I love that you and I both have that faith foundation. So knowing that God ultimately has a plan and He
absolutely.
created us with a purpose. And sometimes we are, off in some other direction. And maybe it's just Him, like you said, packing our bags and saying,
Mhm.
this is the direction I want you to go. So yeah, I love that. And I put together a daily priorities planner that has the 7 areas that I talk about, which are faith, family, friends, field of work, which could be a business and coaching and things like that, or working for somebody else, finances, fitness, and fun. Because we need to make sure that we're looking at where is my focus, right? And what are my authentic goals, not the expectations of everyone around me or society and things like that. So I'll put the link for that free planner in there as well. But I want to end with this question that I'm going to ask all of my guests this year. So of those 7 areas, which one would make the biggest difference for you if you focused on this year? And how do you foresee that making a difference for you?
Oh gosh, I love that question and love that you have a planner. Faith, it would be faith for me because surrender has been my word for the past couple of years. And it is about surrendering to God's will for my life. And this year in particular, I've done a little planning, but not a lot. I really am in this state of curiosity. Like, okay, God, I really want to know what you want me to do this year. I want you to lead. I just want to stay open to moving down the path that you are sending me down. And so I have this, thing, this affirmation that I say, God's ahead of me. God's ahead of me. And so I really want to just kind of surrender that up to God. Like, you got this, show me the path, move me along it, reveal it to me. So it would be faith for me.
Oh, I love that. And we know that, when we're seeking Him in those ways, He's going to bless, right? He's going to use all these things to do even greater things in us and through us. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, your journey, your expertise, and being so generous with what you're offering to women. So if you're listening, I encourage you again, go check the show notes for those links so you can make sure to get in touch with us and get some resources that can help you on your journey. And until next time, keep rethinking your priorities to truly create a life that you love. Thank you.